The island rose out of the fog, silhouetted against a sky torn by storm clouds. Maya expertly piloted her small craft through the choppy waters, eyes scanning the horizon. The frigid spray stung her skin, her hair whipping back in the wind. The sailboat cut into the flanks of waves with a rhythmic crash, the deck under her feet heaving as she crossed over peaks one by one and dropped into one sickening trough after another. She turned her gaze to the dark hulk of the island, which was growing steadily larger. There it is, she muttered to herself, thinking as much as speaking, low voice lost in the moan of the surf. An ominous blight, just as I remembered it. She shook herself, trying to banish the feeling of abstraction and grounding herself in the sensation of cold droplets running down her cheeks, scrutinizing the coastline, calling on all her skill and all the steadiness of her nerves as the wings of a horseshoe cove enfolded her. She expertly guided the sailboat into the relatively calm waters of the cove, then, like a soldier with a checklist, forgot her misgivings and fixed her attention on methodically securing the vessel, folding the canvas sail and wrapping it tightly around the mast, and carefully stowing the dismantled rudder and other gear in waterproof bags. As she stepped onto the rocky shore, the silence was broken only by the crashing of the waves against the rocks. She stood on the pebbly slope of the beach, turning in place, noticing the unnatural stillness and how the air felt heavy with anticipation, like the whole island was holding its breath, waiting for the storm to hit. Maya shook herself again. Nature isn't fooled, she muttered. She knows what's coming. A voice called her back to the moment. Hey, over here! Maya snapped her gaze to a clearing in the trees higher up the slope of the beach. Evie Jace was poised there, leaning against a jeep, casually waving her hand. Evie's face took on a slight tightness. Welcome back to Isla del Cielo, Doctor. Maya gave her a dry smile. Don't you mean Isla Nublar? Evie rolled her eyes. I take it you don't speak irony.
Step relax, folks, don't be shy. Jurassic Park, the reason why. You'll see wonders beyond your dreams. Dinosaurs roar and raptors scream. Jurassic Park, it's a guaranteed delight where prehistoric creatures roam day and night.
Hi everyone, here we are again at Virtual Muse AI, the Mystery Science Theater 3000 of RPGs, where I sit alone in space, playing RPGs with a creative AI chatbot. We already laid the groundwork for a game using Jurassic Park, Edge of Chaos, so today we'll pick up where we left off and begin the first session. I'll put a link to our character creation in the description below if you want more context. Otherwise, we'll get straight into it. Adult characters in Edge of Chaos have 5 health points. Children have 3. A round begins with drawing a Chaos card, introducing the random event which the players will need to react to, such as a natural disaster or a dinosaur encounter, thus driving the story along. Each character can take up to 2 actions on their turn. And then when all characters have acted, including the players and any NPCs, a new round begins, and another Chaos card is drawn to change the situation and force characters to adapt and react anew. We're going to modify this core gameplay loop a little, and instead of drawing a card from the deck which goes with the game, we're going to decide what the event is for ourselves. So we have a little more customization and creative control over it all. We're already way off the rails with this scenario as is, so we might as well keep going. Speaking of which, Abby, would you recap our session 0 and all the setup we did?
The storyline we developed focuses on two characters, Maya Ellis and Evie Jace. Maya was sacked from her job at InGen due to a cover-up involving contamination in the genetic material they were using, and she reached out to Evie for help investigating the matter. We discussed the opening scene, where Maya arrives on the island using a small sailboat and meets Evie at a prearranged spot. We also discussed the characters' motivations and backstories, as well as the threat of a parasitic fungus turning dinosaurs into zombies.
We already have backstories and broad stroke characteristics done, so let's develop these two in terms of game mechanics. Characters get 2 areas of expertise, which will help them in tasks related to that expertise. And they get 3 main adjectives, which describe their personality. Also, characters who are InGen employees have park knowledge, which helps them navigate. Technically, Evie and Maya both worked for InGen, but for flavor, let's say Evie is the only one who actually knows her way around the island because Maya worked in the lab, not in the field. What do you have in mind for Maya? What skills does she excel at? And how do those tie into her backstory?
I think Maya's skills should include botany and genetic engineering, given her background as a naturalist. Those abilities would complement her knowledge of the island's ecosystems and allow her to understand the science behind the park's creation.
How do those work in a practical sense? What are some specific actions where those skills should apply?
With botany, Maya should be able to identify different plant species, recognize toxic or medicinal properties, and understand how plants interact with their environment. Her genetic engineering skills should allow her to analyze DNA samples, recognize genetic modifications, and understand the implications of genetic tampering.
Ooh, nice. Her ability to use plants in medicine may be especially helpful.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe she'll discover new species with unique properties that could aid their survival.
How about inventory?
As a naturalist, Maya would likely carry a backpack with essentials like water purification tablets, a first aid kit, and binoculars. She might also bring a few specialized tools like a portable microscope or a DNA sampling kit to analyze any unusual organisms they encounter.
Perfect. And what 3 adjectives do you think fit Maya?
I think Maya's personality adjectives should be curious, resourceful, and compassionate. These traits would reflect her naturalist background, her ability to think on her feet, and her empathy for all living creatures. Now that we've got Maya's sheet mostly filled out, what's next for your character Evie?
I was thinking Evie could have practical skills to reflect her field expertise, like weapons handling and an excellent sense of direction.
Nice. Those would make her a valuable asset when it comes to dealing with the unexpected dangers on Isla Nublar.
I agree. When creating characters in the system, we get 9 points to distribute between courage, insight, and strength. Each stat must have at least 1 point. How do you want to distribute those points for Maya?
I think Maya's priorities should be insight and courage. As a naturalist, she's used to observing and understanding her surroundings, and she's brave enough to venture into unknown territories. Let's give her 4 points in insight, 3 points in courage, and 2 points in strength. That way, she's well-rounded, but excels in areas that fit her background.
I think we should prioritize strength and courage for Evie, reflecting her physicality and tough as nails personality.
That makes sense. Maybe Evie was a soldier previously. That definitely suggests she'd need strength and courage. How about we give her 4 points in strength, 3 points in courage, and 2 points in insight? She'll still have some analytical skills, but her physical abilities will shine through in combat and intense situations.
I like that. Having a background in the military makes sense. Let's say she was a staff sergeant and she was discharged following an injury. We can leave the type of injury undefined for now, and maybe it will factor into the story somehow later. And those stats are good. She's smart and can show finesse when she has to, but her preference is always to apply force to situations, or shoot first and ask questions later.
That sums up Evie perfectly. Her background and personality definitely lend themselves to a more straightforward, no-nonsense approach, but she's still sharp enough to adapt when necessary.
For her inventory, I was imagining it being simple and practical. A survival multi-tool and a rifle.
A rifle and a multi-tool sounds like a solid start for Evie's inventory. Does she have any personal items with her?
What sorts of personal items do you have in mind?
Maybe a photo of someone back home, or a small token from her past that represents her personality. Something like that could add depth to her character and give us a glimpse into her emotional side.
Maybe a photo in a locket which she wears but never mentions.
That's a great idea. The mystery surrounding the locket could add a layer of intrigue to Evie's character. It raises questions about who might be in the photo and why she keeps it close to her heart.
Exactly. It could be symbolic of the deepening trust between Maya and Evie as the story goes on. Evie could eventually tell Maya who the person is in the photo and why she keeps it.
That's a beautiful way to weave in the locket as a symbol of Evie's growth and trust in Maya. It adds a humanizing element to her character and creates room for a meaningful moment between the two characters.
This is going to be a powerful scene when it eventually happens. What about the photo itself? What does it look like?
I think it should be an old school photo. I imagine it being worn and faded.
Since Jurassic Park is set in 1993, maybe the photo could be from the 80s.
A photo from the 80s would be fitting. Maybe it's a picture of Evie's family or a close friend from before she enlisted in the military. Now that we have a good idea of Evie's past and personality, should we start thinking about the plot twists and challenges they'll face on the island?
Given the fact that Evie and Maya have such limited inventories, when I think it would make sense for them to have a lot more equipment than this stashed in their Jeep. Maybe we should take that disconnect as inspiration, and we should contrive a plot twist where they become separated from their Jeep. That could be how they end up walking in the jungle with meager supplies.
Separating them from their Jeep could create some tense and desperate situations, forcing them to rely on their wits and whatever they have on hand. We could have the Jeep break down, get stuck, or even be stolen by someone or something on the island. What kind of circumstances do you think would lead to this separation?
How about a dinosaur darts into the road, making Evie swerve the Jeep and crash off the edge of the embankment?
That's a thrilling way to separate them from their Jeep and creates a believable reason for them to be stranded in the jungle with limited supplies. The crash could also give them a sense of urgency, knowing they need to find shelter and reassess their situation before nightfall.
I was thinking, for randomizing dinosaurs, how about we create a list of 12 dinosaur species which exist in Jurassic Park, then roll a d12 on that list. I think the main showstopper dinosaurs like raptors and T-Rex should be left off the list so we don't get them randomly, and we can place them in the narrative when and where we want them. But a list of random side dinosaurs would be helpful.
Having a list of secondary dinosaurs that can be randomly generated is a cool idea. I was thinking along the lines of smaller carnivores like Allosaurus or larger herbivores like Triceratops. We should definitely include Stegosaurus as well. They're iconic and could add some nice variety to the encounters. Let's throw in some Compsognathus. They could be a nuisance for Evie and Maya. Here's a possible list: Stegosaurus, Triceratops, Hypsilophodon, Compsognathus, Ornithomimus, Corythosaurus, Parasaurolophus, Othnielia, Allosaurus, Maiasaura, Apatosaurus, and Styracosaurus.
I think that's perfect. And we can always make judgment calls about what kind of dinosaur fits best in any given scene.
Having the flexibility to make adjustments as we go will really help bring the story to life. With this list, we can create some exciting encounters and surprises for Evie and Maya. Now that we have the dinosaur list settled, should we move on to developing the jungle environment itself?
Sure. How do you envision the jungle, particularly the remote dirt road where Maya and Evie are driving along, moments before the dinosaur appears and causes the crash?
The road could be narrow and winding, surrounded by dense foliage with sunlight filtering through the trees. Maybe there's a faint mist rising off the jungle floor.
I imagine the sunlight filtering through the trees is silvery and wan because the sky is darkened by storm clouds.
That adds a sense of tension and foreboding to the moment before the accident, doesn't it?
I think, given that our setting has regular dinosaurs as well as zombie dinosaurs infected by the parasitic fungus, we should have a way to randomize which of those any given dinosaur is. It's more likely that any given dino will be normal, not a zombie. But there's still always a possibility of it being one of the infected. How do you think we should handle rolling for that randomly, reflecting the odds?
We could assign a percentage chance to each type of dinosaur, with maybe 80% being regular and 20% being infected by the fungus. That way, we can easily roll a percentage check and determine if it's a zombie dinosaur or not. We'd need a simple mechanic to tie the percentage check to our dice rolling system. Maybe we could use a 6-sided die, where 1 to 4 result in a normal dinosaur and 5 to 6 indicate a potential zombie infection.
Very streamlined. We can quickly and easily roll d12 to determine the type of dino, then d6 to determine if it's a zombie or not.
Exactly. It keeps the flow of the game smooth and adds that element of suspense. I love how it all ties together. Ready to dive back into the story?
Yeah. So Maya and Evie are driving along the remote road in the jungle, with dense foliage to either side, wan, silvery light filtering through the trees to the misty ground. Suddenly, a dinosaur steps out of the foliage, and Evie has to swerve to avoid crashing into it. In the process, she drives off the shoulder of the road. The Jeep flips over, briefly rolling down a slope before getting lodged against a tree upside down. Disoriented, Maya and Evie unbuckle from their seats and wiggle out of the smashed windows.
I'm picturing the scene vividly, especially the moment when the Jeep flips over and rolls down the slope. I think we should have Maya and Evie take stock of their injuries and surroundings once they're out of the wreckage. Are they battered and bruised, or did they escape relatively unscathed?
Let's say they're unscathed, simply so we can start the game without any injuries or penalties to the characters. How about the dinosaur they swerved to avoid? Did it run off or is it still nearby?
Considering the sudden appearance and their narrow miss, I think the dinosaur is still nearby, watching them from a distance. Maybe it's a herbivore, wary of the commotion, but curious about the wreckage.
I like this. Let's use our dice system to randomize the type of dinosaur and whether or not it's infected. The dinosaur is a Parasaurolophus, and it's not infected. Parasaurolophus.
A Parasaurolophus is a great choice. Its distinctive crest will make for an interesting encounter. Since it's not infected, Maya and Evie might see it as a relatively gentle creature, but still wild and unpredictable. How do you think the Parasaurolophus will react to Maya and Evie's crashed Jeep and their presence in its territory?
Actually, maybe you're right and I'm wrong about how that's pronounced. Anyway, I think Evie is very wary because she knows this animal sees them as intruders. Maybe she can read its posture and knows it's on the brink of charging them. She raises her hand slightly, trying to look calm, backing away slowly.
That's a great move. Maya might follow Evie's lead, but also take a closer look at the dinosaur, fascinated by its appearance and behavior.
Evie sees Maya thinking about interacting with the dinosaur and tries to whisper urgently that they're in danger without raising her voice and making the situation escalate. Does Maya take the hint from Evie, or is she too distracted?
Maya notices Evie's warning glance and hesitates, torn between her curiosity and the potential threat posed by the Parasaurolophus. She slowly turns her attention back to Evie, acknowledging the warning without taking her eyes off the dinosaur.
Evie puts a hand on Maya's shoulder, gently guiding her to take shelter behind the flipped Jeep. Suddenly, the Parasaurolophus charges at them.
The Jeep's metal body provides some cover, but it's clear the Parasaurolophus is determined to protect its territory. Does Evie try to scare it off, or prepare to defend herself and Maya if necessary?
I think she makes the call in the moment that they have to run. She pulls Maya with her and dashes for the cover of the trees.
They sprint towards the dense foliage, the Parasaurolophus's thunderous footsteps closing in behind them. Evie expertly navigates the underbrush, pulling Maya along as they desperately seek refuge deeper in the jungle.
Does the Parasaurolophus pursue them, or is its focus on the Jeep? Maybe it will be distracted by the flipped vehicle and they can get away.
The Parasaurolophus seems to momentarily focus on the Jeep, giving Evie and Maya a small window to escape. Its attention is drawn to the wreckage, and for a few precious seconds, it appears to forget about the two fleeing women. Losing the vehicle and most of their gear puts them in a tough spot. Now they'll have to rely on whatever they had on them at the time of the crash.
This provides a great cliffhanger for this session. We'll pick it up next time with Evie and Maya walking in the jungle until the next disaster happens to them.
You're going to carry that weight.